afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on Saturday, the 12th of February, for our 1 p.m. stand-up. I'm Rachel Callagher, the Deputy Controller for Auckland Emergency Management, and today I have with me our Mayor, Wayne Brown, Deputy Mayor Desley Simpson, Met Service Meteorologist Georgina Griffiths, our Fire and Emergency New Zealand spokesperson Vaughan McKerrath, and Stacey van der Putten from Auckland Transport. Before I start my briefing, I'm going to hand over to the Mayor and Deputy Mayor, and they're going to say a few words before they need to just quickly duck away for another commitment. Mayor Brown.
Thank you, Rachel. Kia ora tātou. Cyclone Gabrielle is on our doorstep. It'll be a challenging time for all of us, but I want you to know that we are well prepared and taking it very seriously. This time we've been forewarned about the bad weather, and cyclones are serious. Our emergency services are on high alert and ready to respond. With teams of courageous people across the region ready to help us get through this time. Please check on neighbours, friends and whānau who may need help. Stay connected, support one another and work together to get through the challenges ahead. Auckland is strong and resilient, and we will get through this. Stay safe. Kia kaha. Kia ora.
Yeah, just quickly on the situation, you said there's a bit of an issue with the shortage of sandbags. How's that going? How's the work going with
I think Rachel will inform you of the details of that when she speaks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Your Worship. You've still got time, Auckland. Please prepare yourself and your home and make a plan. There will be destruction from this cyclone, and we all must do what we can right now to keep safe. If you know someone who might need your help or our help, please reach out. If you know older people, vulnerable people, or people with language barriers, please let us know. Our phone number is 0800 22 22 00. As much as possible, we prepared across the region areas that we know are vulnerable to the impacts of another severe weather event. This includes cleaning drains at known flooding hotspots and having crews on standby to respond to blockages, debris and downed trees. We should now all be aware of what we need to do to keep ourselves safe. And together we will. Thanks, Auckland, for all you are doing. Please be prepared and keep safe. Thank you. Over to you, Rachel.
They have got another commitment that they need to go to, but I'm sure that we can cover off any questions that you have once we've finished our briefing.
That's okay. We've got a couple of minutes in there. Just in front of the mics, that'd be great. Mayor, just your message to Auckland is given, there was criticism around lack of communication last time 2 weeks ago. What do you have to say to people who are sort of getting nervous about the onslaught of this weather event, given the sort of issues that we had last time?
Well, this time we've got a lot more warning, and we are better prepared.
And what have you yourself been doing on the ground?
The last few days I've been working with building inspectors. I've been lifting rubbish in West Auckland with the Student Volunteer Army. I've been lifting and packing rubbish with the Navy groups, and I've been also back in the office double checking everything. And I've been working, of course, with the team there led by the Chief Controller and the Deputy Controller. And it's been intense, I can tell you that.
And there have been people, in South Auckland and the Rodney district sort of saying, hoping that, the preparedness extends to them as well. What is your message to people sort of outside of the central Auckland area? Is everything going to be okay for them too?
Well, I'm well aware of the remote rural areas of Rodney and parts of Franklin, and I've ensured that they've been included in all of the planning not just an urban-based plan, and it is expected that the storm, if I'm to follow from the advice I've had, will be from the north first. So really we have been thinking about Rodney. But I think I've got to go. I've been in trouble. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So as we see the evidence of Cyclone Gabrielle drawing closer, I just want to acknowledge the concern that many of you will be experiencing, and I want to thank you for taking the measures that you've been taking to prepare yourselves, your loved ones, your neighbours, other members of your communities. We know that this can be an anxious time, but we're all working together to support each other. In events of this scale, we can only get through them by working alongside each other, and I urge you, as always, to check on those around you who may benefit from your support, particularly those elderly, more vulnerable, and offering a helping hand where you're able to. The Auckland Emergency Management team, alongside our partner agencies, has been in the process of preparing for this event whilst pivoting from the recovery of last month's storm. This is to ensure that all necessary services are best placed to respond to the impacts of Cyclone Gabrielle. Some programs of work, such as the removal of flood-affected property from curbsides, has been halted. Our planning and response teams will be revising plans to resume this work once the impacts of Gabrielle are more certain. So far, Auckland Emergency Management has provided 370 households with emergency accommodation, and others are still coming through the doors at our centres. We're working closely with MSD and MB to make sure that these families have access to the support and further temporary accommodation if they need it. I will now shortly pass over to Auckland meteorologist Georgina Griffiths for an update on the current Met Service forecast. We are, however, looking down the barrel of a severe and potentially devastating weather event, and you must take the official advice seriously. Your safety is and should always be paramount. We're all very aware of the tendency to panic buy. Many of us will have experienced that during the COVID pandemic. So I just want to assure you that supermarkets will continue to remain open. They're well stocked. The only thing that might change is that if individual supermarkets are impacted by the storm. If you live in an area prone to being isolated or cut off, make sure you've got what you need to shelter in place for a few days. That includes food and water. Our team has also been working swiftly to confirm and establish civil defence centres and shelter sites across Tamaki Makaurau. A civil defence centre, which will sometimes be referred to as a CDC, offers a safe place to eat, sleep and access to essential support services. Supplies at the CDCs will be limited, but please ensure you're prepared with your grab bag, go bag, which should include the things that you might need. Items such as nappies, baby food, photo ID if you have it, and essential medication should be considered. Shelters differ from the CDCs in that they will provide immediate refuge. However, they're not intended for extended stays. Blankets, tea and coffee, a welcoming face will all be available at these sites. If you need to leave your home, then your pets should leave with you. We don't want staying with pets to be a barrier to you taking the action that you need to. Dogs that are on a leash and controlled at all times, along with contained cats, will be welcomed at the CDC and shelter sites. Civil defence centres and shelters are being set up so that they are ready to receive people from this evening. Please check the Auckland Emergency Management website to become familiar with the nearest CDC or shelter to your location, and keep an eye on our AEM website, so that's aem.org.nz, and Facebook pages for up-to-date information. I do want to assure you that if mass evacuation is required or further large-scale sites needed, then these will be stood up quickly, and we will be continuing to assess the needs of additional sites. Red and yellow stickered homes. Council's building assessment team has now issued 286 red placards, 1,689 yellow placards, and a further 2,600 plus buildings have white placards. If your house has a red entry prohibited sticker, it is essential that you stay away from your property for your safety and the safety of your family and others. Further instability is highly possible as a result of the expected weather event. If your house has a yellow restricted access sticker or placard, it's important that you follow the restrictions given on the placard and seriously consider avoiding any entry for the duration of the event at least. There is the potential for new landslides to occur and for existing landslides to reactivate. If your house has a white placard or is next to properties that have a placard, yellow or red, if you see any signs of instability or if you're concerned about the stability of the land around your house, we recommend you are extra cautious during this event. Landslides often show warning signs before they occur, so common signs include new cracking or movement of the ground, new cracks appearing inside the house, unusual sounds such as trees cracking, pavement sinking, or new debris on or around your house. If you're concerned about landslides, consider finding alternative accommodation, particularly during heavy rain. With regard to education providers, our advice is that you should plan for things to change if they need to. Please follow your usual channels for communicating with your schools, kura and early childhood providers. Similarly, please contact your employers to see what their plans are for working through Cyclone Gabrielle, such as working from home where it's possible to do so. I also have some important information regarding the normal Monday and Tuesday curbside rubbish collection, so they will not be going ahead on Monday and Tuesday. So if people have been organised and have got their bins out ahead of Monday, then we request that you bring those back in. We are hoping to be able to resume curbside collections from Wednesday, but obviously we'll need to assess that as we just look at what's happening with the weather over the coming days. For people that miss out on the Monday or Tuesday curbside collection, your normal collection will happen at its next planned date, but if you need to get rid of rubbish in the intervening time, then that can be taken to one of the transfer stations free of charge. Before I hand to Georgina and our other spokespeople, I'd just like to thank those who are leading in their communities to support the Auckland Emergency Management effort, and all those across our partner agencies who I know are working incredibly hard to ensure that people are kept as safe as possible. Remember to keep up to date with the official information channels and the Met Service forecast, and just again thank you to everybody who's helping to prepare our region to get ready for this upcoming event. Ngā mihi kia koutou. Thank you, Georgina. I'll take questions at the end if that's all right.
Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa. So let's talk about Cyclone Gabrielle, and in this particular forum I'm only going to be talking about Auckland. We have issued a red warning for strong wind for Auckland and also Great Barrier Island and the islands of the Hauraki Gulf. We have also issued a red heavy rain warning for those same areas. Now, a red warning means that we expect impacts. The warnings extend from, in the case of rainfall, from now through to Tuesday morning, 4 a.m. Tuesday. In the case of wind, we're just starting, and from later this afternoon, evening, through till 9 p.m. Tuesday. Now, when we look at wind, Aucklanders will see a wet and windy Sunday, but this is the entree. Okay, the warnings might kick in soon or now, but this is not the impact day. At this stage, we're forecasting significant rainfall accumulations on starting today but into Monday and Tuesday, 200 to 250 millimetres of rain all up for North Auckland, north of about Whangaproa, also Great Barrier Island. Now that's a significant number or total of rainfall for those areas. Elsewhere in Auckland, there's a range of what rainfall totals we expect, 150 to 250 millimetres of rain. But we don't expect impacts today. What we are looking for is Monday being a really significant day for rain, with the high intensity rainfalls possible, 25 to 40 millimetres in just 1 hour, and anywhere that gets those higher intensity deluge or downpour type events will see impacts. The red warning signals that we're vulnerable to rain, slips, flooding. So we expect impacts Auckland. The difference between now and Friday's event a couple of weeks ago is that I think the impacts will be more chunky parts of Auckland, not all of Auckland impacted, but we're actually not able to tell you where specifically at the current time. I'll talk more about positioning in a minute. So plan for flooding or slip impacts and just count yourself lucky if you don't see them. Other parts of Auckland almost certainly will. With regards to wind, we can already see Cyclone Gabrielle, which is a very deep low to the north of New Zealand right now. She's starting to show up on the radar. We're also starting to see significant severe gale gusts in Northland. So we're starting to see impacts in Northland now. I also just saw Great Barrier Island in the outer Hauraki Gulf winds pick up to around that 120 to 130 kilometre an hour. So those stronger winds have not really started for Auckland. They peak tomorrow in the easterlies, and they favour the north and east of the mainland, also Great Barrier and the Hauraki Gulf Islands. But if you live in an area of Auckland that does not blow in easterlies, again, don't be fooled. We expect a pause as the cyclone goes very close to us late Monday night into early hours of Tuesday, and then severe southwest gales at some point on Tuesday. And almost everyone will get that significant southwesterly based on today's forecast, and that will be the kicker for many people. So if you live in the south and west of the region, you may not get the wind to the end of the forecast period, which is Tuesday. So just to recap, red warnings are not issued lightly. We expect the rain, slip and flooding impacts, and it will depend on where you live. What's your worst outcome? Is it rain or is it wind? On that note, Cyclone Gabrielle is currently forecast to come very close to Great Barrier Island, the outer Hauraki Gulf, around about midnight Monday into the early hours of Tuesday morning. If that plan plays out, we're going for the full trifecta of impacts Auckland. Expect a significant storm surge in the early hours of Tuesday morning. We have a high tide at 2 a.m. Tuesday and a storm surge of 0.5 metre if that outcome plays out. This would mean low-lying parts of Auckland, and you know who you are, Waiheke Island, Maraetai, around the Hunua coastline, also Kohimarama, Okahu Bay, parts of Tamaki Drive, would expect to see a coastal storm surge on that high tide in the early hours of Tuesday morning, 2 a.m. Now that we have lesser confidence on that storm surge, but we've got a bit of time. That's the last impact. We've got rain and wind first, and then that potential for storm surge. So all I urge Aucklanders is to keep up with Met Services forecasts and timings. Note that we expect you, individually, to see something, some sort of impact, whether it's the wind, whether it's the rain and flooding, or whether it's that storm surge. Don't be fooled if you're not affected until Tuesday. And just remember today's the good day. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Georgina. I'm now going to invite Vaughan McKerrath from Fire and Emergency New Zealand just to talk about some of the preparedness work and key messages from their organisation. Thanks, Vaughan.
Thanks, Rachel. Tēnā koutou kata. Fire and Emergency is prepared for the impacts of Cyclone Gabrielle here in Auckland and also in our neighbouring regions. We've sent additional resources to Northland and Coromandel, and we are bringing more resources into Gisborne and Auckland today. That includes our urban search and rescue, crews with specialist capability in light rescue and water rescue, rapid damage assessment, as well as paramedics and engineers that will be working alongside our local crews. We always maintain a high level of readiness, and that's business as usual for us as an emergency service. People can be confident that there are sufficient firefighters available to respond to Cyclone Gabrielle. So far today, we have responded to a small number of 111 calls from people in Northland relating to wind damage that included helping evacuate a family after a fallen tree in their house, helping people tie down a caravan, and several calls to fallen trees and power lines on roads. We're also working closely with our partner agencies, Police, St John and Emergency Management. There are a few pieces of advice, though, that I'd like to share, and I'd like to remind people that, first, take action at home if you haven't already. As the previous speakers have said, tie down all these items in your backyard and around your property and take them inside. This also includes tying down trampolines, outdoor furniture. Check with your whānau and your neighbours. Just check on your neighbours, make sure that they are all right and if they need support. Once the storm hits, stay off the roads if you can. That reduces your risk of being trapped by flooding or by fallen trees and power lines. Don't drive or ride through floodwater. It's hard to judge the depth or see hidden objects, and you risk being swept away if your vehicle stalls. Our biggest request is, once the storm begins, is to please help us to get to the people who need us most. This means only calling 111 if life is at risk. For example, if you or others are trapped and need rescue, if there is a fire, if there is a landslide, if you need to evacuate and you can't get out safely by yourself. We always give priority to the calls where life and safety is at risk. Please keep our 111 phone lines free for people to need us urgently. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you. And finally, before I wrap up, I'm going to pass to Stacey Vanderputten. So Stacey is going to provide an update around the roading network and just some of the key messages from Auckland Transport.
Thank you, Rachel. Kia ora koutou. The safety of Aucklanders is our number one priority as we head into this weather event. As we've already heard today, the key message to Aucklanders today is to keep off the roads. If you need to travel, obviously take the time to plan your journey with the most up-to-date information available. With the high winds today, there is a possibility there may be closures on the Harbour Bridge. Currently, we do have speed restrictions in place on the Harbour Bridge and reduced lanes that are currently operating. In terms of high-sided vehicles and motorcycles should consider delaying their journey or detour via State Highway 18 and 16 on the Western Ring route. The storm is predicted to bring very high winds, as we've heard. That does mean that obviously our roads may have debris, there may be trees down and power lines, as we've already heard. Drive very cautiously. Again, take the time to plan your journey. In terms of being prepared for road closures, there are specific areas to avoid should flooding occur, and they are the Wairau Valley, Tamaki Drive, Fanshawe Street, around Victoria Park, and Fred Thomas Drive. There are many other sections in terms of our network that we see as particularly vulnerable, obviously due to the recent weather events or just to knowledge in terms of other weather events of this nature. So please take the time to go check on the website and plan your journey. The Harbour Master has issued an alert to all boaties to check their vessels and address any issues in preparation for arrival of the cyclone. We're saying that obviously a lot of Aucklanders would have already had that message and taken the time to do so. If you haven't, please do so today with urgency. Our public transport network is continuing to operate, but changes to services and cancellations may be made to ensure our customers and our people remain safe. Depending on conditions, we will be making decisions based upon particular diversions that are already operating. Obviously, the wind has a key part to play here in terms of that, so we will be pausing our train services with our train operator, Auckland One Rail and Kia Rail, and making those decisions as we need to. And same, of course, when it comes to ferry services, working with our operators to make decisions on whether it is safe to travel or not. Our goal with these things is to obviously try and keep public transport operating. Why? We know that there's a lot of essential services out there and employees out there that rely on public transport to get to where they need to be. But we do need to take a risk-based approach and make sure that we keep both our customers and our people safe as we continue to operate. In terms of preparation, we've done a lot to prepare for this event, including going around the network and making sure drains are clear and making sure that where we have slips that they've had protection as much as practical in preparation for the event. We have a large number of people on standby to try and support in the instance of flooding as well as slips. So we have people ready to go to support the network in real time. To reiterate, please avoid unnecessary travel and check our website at at.govt.nz. There is a banner up the top which will help people go directly to all the most up-to-date information, and we'll be keeping that updated throughout the journey of the next few days. Thank you.
Thanks, Stacey. And just two more final things from me. So just in relation to sandbags, want to advise that the sandbag stations that we have stood up yesterday continue to be operating. There is, of course, heavy demand for the bags, and so bags are continuing to be delivered to those sites. So if people turn up and there isn't bags there, just be reassured that we are continuing to resupply them as they become available. And I know that there was deliveries happening actually as I was walking down here to give this briefing. And finally, just a heads up on emergency mobile alerts. These are alerts that are pushed out to cell phones in a given area at the direction of emergency management agencies. Given the forecasted conditions, an emergency mobile alert will be issued to the entire Auckland region shortly after this stand-up. The emergency management alert will be issued because Met Service has red heavy rain warnings in place and the whole region is at risk of flooding due to the ground saturation. The issuing of this emergency management alert should speak to the seriousness to which we want people to take this incoming weather. And that is the end of today's stand-up, and we can take some questions.
Did you mention that there will be destruction from this cyclone? From an infrastructure perspective, what are your main concerns?
Look, I did touch on this, I think the day before yesterday. The difference between last month's event and this event is obviously the severe winds that are accompanying the rainfall. So we already have those saturated grounds, and we can expect to see with these winds things like trees coming down on power lines, further blockages to roads. There is also that additional complication of coastal erosion being caused by those coastal surges. So in terms of sort of picking one, I don't think it's a case of picking one. I think there is a range of impacts we could see, but they could also include some things we didn't see last time.
Are you expecting some of those major slips we've seen could reactivate as well?
That is a very strong possibility. So the reactivation of existing slips and also the potential for new slips.
Has there been any advice given to schools, and what has that advice been?
Yes, so we've been working closely with the Ministry of Education, and our role is to provide them with information, so the information we hold about what we know in terms of the likely impact and severity of the event, and then they will work with their schools to provide the advice around how they should operate in these situations, and we understand that that's happening at the moment. So we just encourage people to connect in with the usual channels for schools around what their schools' arrangements will be.
So no sort of direct advice to perhaps close, so just providing information and schools make that decision on their own?
I haven't seen their advice, but I understand that they are providing that to schools at the moment.
Just on sandbags, so you mentioned the sand situation's okay, but there's a supply issue with the bags. What should people be doing, potentially bringing their own bags, or how should they deal with that?
We have got bags continuing to come out to site, so it's not that there isn't bags available, it's just that they may not be there at the very point in time someone turns up, just because there is more coming in. I guess the thing that I would just remind people is that sandbags work in certain situations, but they're not necessarily the solution to all flooding or surface water situations at properties. So other things people should be doing are things like, clearing gutters, checking drains and channels around their households, helping out with just checking curb and channels on streetscapes as well, moving debris away from your property. Anything that's loose that could fly around, could block water moving away, are all things that people should be doing as well.
Do you know how many sandbag stations have been distributed since the sandbag stations opened?
I was trying to get that information because I thought someone would ask it, and they were just in the process of doing a tally at that time, so I don't have the absolute number, but I know it's in the order of thousands and thousands.
And just on drains, because obviously crews have been working to clear those since the floods we saw 2 weeks ago. Do you have concerns around the council mains, any debris that might still be clogging those, and what work's being done to make sure that those drains are clear?
We've had close to 300 staff and contractors working out on the ground, very, very hard since last month's storm event to clear drains and remove debris from streams. Obviously, with this event coming in, the focus has very much shifted to particular priority hotspot areas where we know there is an exacerbated risk. But it's not possible to get to every single curb and channel, every drain in Auckland in the time frame that we've had. But it very much has been a focus of ours to do as much as we can to prepare for this event.
So that's why there's kind of a call for people to, if they can, help out to clear gutters, curbsides near their homes.
Oh look, and the thing is, it doesn't take much. It can be someone throwing some rubbish out of their car window, which of course is a terrible thing to do in itself, but it could be as simple as that. Since it's been cleared, someone's thrown some rubbish out. That in itself could cause a blockage to water flow through that drain. So people can play their part by just getting out and checking those, and if there's something that's sort of blocking those grates, then just removing those would be an incredibly helpful at this time when we all need to chip in and do our part.
Just a question for Georgina, if that's okay. You mentioned obviously with the cyclone this time, we've got the added elements of the storm surges and the wind. From a rainfall perspective, though, how does it compare to what we saw a fortnight ago?
The forecast rainfall totals are comparable to lesser depending on what part of Auckland. If you live north of Whangaparoa, they look comparable. If you live south of Whangaparoa, they are lesser. But remember, impact forecasting, which is what a red warning, rain warning does, we don't need the type of rain we had on Friday to flood or slip Auckland because we're so saturated. So we do expect those higher intensity, the peak in the rainfall Monday afternoon, evening, to be impactful. This time, of course, wind is the initial variable of concern. It's already blowing well in the region, particularly north of the region. So wind first, then the heavy rain on Monday, and then possibly that storm surge 2 a.m. Tuesday. So just be vigilant, eyes on radar, listening to what these helpful people are saying around which parts. So just fellow Aucklanders, it's a longer event with lesser numbers from a rainfall point of view, but again, we don't need it. We don't need the big wind numbers for things to fall over, and we don't need those heavy rain numbers to be out of the park to cause impacts. Thank you.
Perhaps there's one more if there is one.
Yeah, so just, I guess, we hadn't have had that big flood event just over 2 weeks ago. We've been in a better position in terms of our drains. So how much is that and the impacts of that sort of, what sort of position has it put us in for this event in terms of preparedness?
Look, my understanding is that this event would have been impactful regardless of the event last month. So of course, having the two together is not a situation that we want. As I've said, our focus has been on initially the response to the first storm event, and then we've had to pivot to be ready for this next. So our focus has very much been on doing everything we can whilst dealing with the previous impacts to then now get ready for this upcoming event. So again, just a message to everyone to just plan, prepare, check in family and friends, and just take the steps needed to be safe. Thank you.
Would like to just frame up the weather. Sure. So just to be very clear, even if we had not seen the flooding Friday 27th, the rainfall forecast numbers are high. They're above warning amounts for Auckland, and the wind gusts that are forecast for Auckland are top end. So even without 2 weeks ago, we would expect wind damage in the region. Additionally, this is a very deep low. Put a number on it, 960 hectopascals, comes very close to Auckland. We haven't seen that in 40 years. So we don't often forecast a storm surge, in fact we very rarely do, of 0.5 metre for Auckland. We're just lucky the tides are not overly large at the moment. So this is a serious and significant event, even without the previous one for Auckland. And while we're talking serious and significant, almost all of, in fact the whole North Island is under watch warning or red warning for some aspect. So this is a serious event for New Zealand. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And just a reminder just to stay in tune with those different channels of information. So Met Service, of course, and our Auckland Emergency Management website, aem.org.nz. Thank you.